Hello guys, this is Vishwesh. I'm currently fourth year graduate at SRM. So right now I'm starting DSA series. So you don't have to know anything. It's basically completely from scratch. There were many people like who are struggling with DSA, and I think this series is gonna help you out. So if you find interesting, subscribe to my channel, do like and share the videos, and if you had any other friends who is struggling with the DSA, you can share it out with your friends. So let's get into this. So these are the topics to be covered for this video. Firstly, I was like I'm starting with C++. As we all know, what is C++? It's a high level programming language. So you might come across difference between a compiler and interpreter. So what the compiler does is like it basically it compiles the all it compiles the each and every line of the code and transform it to the assembly code. Then that assembly code will be run into as a machine level code, which is binaries, zeros and ones, as you all know. So 0 is for false and 1 is for true. So that's the background regarding C++. And when it comes across header files, so what basically these header files does. So header files are the separate C++ or that sort of language specific files which consists of the functionalities of that specific functions. Like if you take as you are aware of C++, we have a cin statement and a cout statement. What these basically does is it is to take input from the user, and it is to be print out the statement. So basically we don't know what these kind of functions. So what does compiler does, or what the C programmers or compiler does. So these are the functions that is stored in the separate header files. Like let's take iostream file. So when you install through your compiler, in that compiler's path there is a specific file called iostream, where it basically consists of all the basic necessary functions regarding int, like cin, cout, everything, whatever the basic functionality is required, it will be stored in that specific file. So when you import the header files, so what that compiler does is when it's compiling, it will just run the code that hash include, right? So which indeed its meaning is include all the functions and functionalities of that specific header file, which means like this header file. So if let's take an example that will be more clear. Like if you take iostream as a separate file, and which basically consists of you know functions like cin, cout, and what else, strings, int, what does int does, what does, and everything. So when you create a separate file which names like program, and in that file if you write hash include iostream, which basically means include all the files in this specified program. So whatever these functions, these will be included in this specific file, so that the compiler will know what is cin, what is cout, so that whenever these lines comes on its way, so it does the functionality of that specific function. So these are the basic things about header files. So also one thing I need to be told you that, so there was different header files regarding C++. Like we have iostream, and we have when you come across HTML and some other basic stuff, whether we will get vectors for the vector as a different header file, and also maps. So there was different header files which has a different functionality. In this you will have a vector data structure in this unordered map. So and also like for the power of or square root, for these max functionalities we have different max.h header file. So to include all the header files, instead of for each and every function, instead of including that header file, we have a bits slash std c++.header file. So this includes each and every header file, whatever the header files that exist, it includes everything. So it includes iostream, vector, maps. So it includes everything, each and everything. So you don't need to mention whenever you used vector, you don't need to include vectors, or when you don't need to include maps. Just write this header file, that will include everything. So we know this C++, what is basic, what the use of C++. As we know, what's the difference between C and C++? As C, we doesn't have any oops concepts in C. So that incremented or extended version of the C is C++. As we all know, plus means it is increment, right? In a programming language, like in a programming conversation, we used to say plus means increment. So as C doesn't have oops concepts, so we extended it to include oops language. That's why it's an increment of C. That's why we call it as C++. So yeah, that's the history behind C++, and we know what does a header file means. So let's write the simple statement. Include bits slash standard c++.h. So this is the way of writing the header files. So this is the header file name. .h represent header file, the file extension. Then we using namespace standard and int main. So this is a boiler template for the C program. I know. As you all think, what's the use of this and what is this new stuff using namespace standard? So unlike in C, we don't need to include under quotes percentage. Like we don't need to include as it is an integer or something. We directly mention the variable name, like just a variable name. We don't need to include it's an integer using the ampersand or others location. So but only thing is, whenever you're writing a C++ program, you need to include for every variable. Like when you are including vectors, you need to use standard initialization, then you have to declare it as a vector. So for each and every variable or each and every data type or data structure, you need to use this standard as the standard as the initialization. So in order to remove it, like we are mentioning in the above, in the main section, as use namespace as standard. So wherever you got a vector, it will append standard in front of it, so you don't need to mention it again. So if you using namespace standard in the above line, so you don't need to rewrite again. So you can directly use vector, like just no, that will be too complex. Like just directly int n, that kind of stuff. You don't need to mention the standard and all. It will directly append. So that's the use of using namespace standard. So we know what is C++. We came across what is header files, and we came across what is namespace standard. So then comes completed this C++, and we completed header files. Then we come across, then we get into this input output. As we all know, what is input output? Input is the user value, and output what the computer needs to print out. So as we all know, in C we have scanf function as well as printf function to print the statement. But when you come across C++, we have scene, which is to take user input value, and cout to print the output value. And one more thing, like have you observed the difference? For the printing statement we are using right shift operator, sorry, and for the input statement you're using left shift operator. So you gotta check out this. Like if you made a mistake, then it will give you a runtime error, compilation error. So these are the input statement. Let's take an example, then you'll get about it. Let's say like include header files using namespace standard. Then int main. Suppose let's return 0. Why we are returning 0? When you come across function, then you will get to know, as every function, like whatever the function we included in the program, it acts as a function. So int main is also a function, as we are indicating with the data type as int, so we gotta return something. That's why you're including return 0. So make it as a, let's just make it as template, return 0. Okay. So if user gives some 20 as an input, we just need to print that input, right? So for that we are using C. Like let's take int n. So we are creating a variable named n, and we are storing some value to it. So what like at the starting we don't have any value, so it will be a garbage value, some negative, some VM232, some 3290, some garbage value. So after we given value to it, it will store that value in the variable n, and then we can access and we can print out the value. We can even initialize the variables. Let's say if you do n equal to 10, which means like there was a container name n that stores 10 value 10 in a memory space. Like let's say this is a memory, like in your main memory, and there were like so many other spaces, and this is stored in somewhere. We don't know exact memory location because it will be automatically allocated by the operating system. So let's say this is the n, maybe this is n, and it shows value 10. So whenever you call a in variable n, it will return you the output of the 10. So that's how the programs works. So let's focus on the syntax. So we already have a 10. So if you want to print that value, you can directly give cout right shift operator the value of the variable. So what does it? It will print out let's say output screen. It just print out the value as 10. Okay, cool. So how do we take, like we are not initializing value, we don't know what the value is user taking. Like if suppose if some RAM wants to give the computer 100, like whatever he wish for, so one time 100, one time 10, 50, whatever he wish for. So then how does the computer take the value whatever the RAM is typing? So for that we have a specific function. We have cin function, which specifically used to take the input from the user. So how do we use the cin function? So first we declare a variable. What this line makes is we have a memory space. Let's take memory SSD or some primary memories, whatever, and there are some thousands of locations in this memory, and the compiler automatically allocate a block. Take a block, as it is an integer, it takes 4 bytes, 4 bytes. Okay, and it will name it as n. As we don't initialize or we don't take any value, it contains of garbage value. So whenever we execute a statement c in n, then in the output screen, it will ask you to type type any name, like what I say, give any value. Like if user has given a 10 or 100, then whatever the number that reads from the screen, it will be directly goes to this block and it will store 100 in this block. So wait, I'll show you the difference. So it will take that 100 and it will store in this memory block. Okay, is that sounds cool? So then if you want to print this value, you can directly use, as we know, to print the output value, we can use cout statement. So what is basically does is this piece of code. What does this piece of code do? It takes the input 10 for these two statements and it will just print the value, the same value which that screen read. So that's what this program is. So we completed the basics C++, we completed header files, and we done input output. Let's go to basic theory related to GG logic, because these are the essential fundamental factors for the programming, because we came across, definitely we will come across when each and every function, because each and every function will only be distinguished based on it is DG1 or DG2. Let's go to simple situations. I'll explain you, don't worry. So what is DG logic? As we all know, computers only know zeros and ones, right? Because whatever you write the code, it definitely will be compiled by the compiler or interpreter, and at the end of the day it won't be zeros and ones. So what is DigiLogic? Even DigiLogic will tell you the same thing. It is, if the voltage is 0, it is a low voltage, and if the voltage is 1, it is a high voltage, right? The same thing appears. So in a programming world, the number 0 represents false and the number 1 represents true. Okay, so wherever they mention false, it means the value of that is 0. It means digitally it is 0. Wherever it true means it is basically a 1. You can even return 0 for that boolean expression. Like there will be wherever a data type boolean, it will only store true or false, right? So you can even store zeros and ones. 0 represents false, 1 represents true. Sounds cool, right? And also I need to include one more thing. Like if there were multiple things where you come across zeros and ones in the loops concepts, or if else. So if this condition is true, which means if that condition returns 1 or 1 plus, which means basically it is more than 1, it means basically it's a true value. So then the statement in that if will be executed, and if not, then else statement will be executed. Don't worry, we'll discuss in the further videos regarding if else loops, patterns, and everything. Just now focus on the conceptual wise. Make use of make base stronger, so that in the future you can even grasp the concepts very easily. Make foundations very strong. That's what I told you. In the DSA, if your foundations are strong, you can easily grasp any concept. That I can guarantee you. So let's shift into another topic. This is the last topic that left out for this. Day 1 we completed this also, how the basic theory related to digilogics, and only thing lost that left out is data types and variables. Right. Let's get it. So what is data types? So data types are the typecast, or you don't say typecast, it's a type of the value that is stored in the memory. Like suppose if the value is 10, which is basically an integer, so the value that is stored in the address location, that will be stored as an integer. If the value is minus 1.5, it is also integer, but as it has the point values, we consider it as a floating points, which means like after the dot. So in the address space it will be stored as a float. So when you are accessing, like you are telling the operating system that the value that is storing is not an integer, it is a float, so that it will allocate the space for that variable, and it will store that value. So I will ask you a question. So why we are using the data types? Do it really necessary, like in order to store the value, do the data types matters? Because let's check this. Because why is this necessary? Because see, as we know, int size is 4 bytes, which is basically in the memory location. It will allocate 4 bytes of memory. Means this is 4 bytes. If there is a float, or if there is long integer, long, they take 8 bytes. So depending upon the size, it can allocate the memory location. For that case, whatever the value we are storing, we are like initializing its data type, so that it will allocate the enough size for that specific variable. That's why we are mentioning the data types. So there was so many data types. I'll discuss only the main data types. Let's say we have parameter data types. That's it. First one, int. Second one, float, double, long, char, then boolean, string. So as we all know, int is basically an integer number from -v to positive v, which doesn't has any decimal points. The same goes float. Float are the floating point numbers. So floating point means like 2.5, 3.5, 5.5, whatever it be. But let's take this case, double. Double also is a floating point number. Then what's the difference between float and double? Because if you take a number x equal to 2.6666, then you can store that in a float variable. But if a number is 2.666666, as floating numbers exceeds 6 digits, then float isn't sufficient to store that value, so then we use double. That's the main funda difference between float and double. Then it is long. If integer is more than 4 billion, like it crosses 4 billion, then int cannot be able to store this value, so then we use long can able to store up to 8 billion numbers. And character, so let's first consider this boolean. Boolean is just to store it is true or false, or you can even use for 0 or 1, just a binary numbers. And character is to store the characters from a b single characters. But if you want to store a set of characters or set of string, like you can a set of words or set of empty sentences, then you will go for a string like a b c d some money. So if you want to store this, you'll use the data type as string. If you want to store a single character, we'll use single characters. So this is the regarding data types. And we'll go to this variables. As we all know, the variables is the address location in a memory, which consists of the specific value that we initialize using data type. Let's say int n, which is mainly is an n, and its type is int. It has 4 address location, as it is a 4 bytes of memory, right? So that's the variable. And we have we have some rules to declare variables. So variables never starts with numbers. Also, variables never starts with special characters, which means if you are declaring a variable, you can declare like 1 2 3, because it's not a like character, it's a number. So as we know, compilers takes these numbers as a specific value. It cannot allocate address location with this number. So that's why we don't include the variables with the numbers. That is the main funda of this line. And special character means we cannot initialize the variable, like we cannot declare the variables using a dollars or hash with this. Also, variable name cannot be a keyword. What does it mean? As we all know, int, float, these are the data types. We can even call it as a keywords. So we cannot declare a variable with these keywords like int, float. We cannot declare a variable name float, because float is already a keyword. So we cannot declare a variable name with that keywords. So these are the rules to declare a variable. So then I'll show you the implementation of these concepts using an online compiler for now. Later then we will install this in your local machine, and we can able to run those codes. For now sake, we will use the online compiler. Let's just clear everything. So first we started with of C++ basics, right? Then we came across header files. So first include header files. We have so many header files like stream, we have a vector, we have a maps, so in order to include everything, we're just using a single header file. So that is basically hashtag info bits slash standard C++ dot h. So this is the way of writing the header files. Then think over the situation what I told you. So for each and every function or each and every variable we are using, we need to use standard as a standard reference before creating any variables or functions. So in order to make it as a standard throughout the program, so we are declaring standard in the global section. So using namespace as standard. So we don't need to write it again and again as using standard reference. So that's how the basic global section. Then go for int main function. So this is the boilerplate of the C++ program. So then we come. What are the topics that we discussed? So come again. Header files, and we'll go for input output and the data types and all. So let's declare a variable. No, let's check int 1 2 3. So 1 2 3 is equal to 0. Cout 1 2 3. So do you think it will run? No, definitely it will not run. It will give you a compilation error. Why? Because see, the variable name is starting with the numbers. So as we all know, the variable name cannot start with numbers or special characters, or it shouldn't be a keyword. So definitely it will give you a compilation error. See, compilation. So the variable name will only be started with some alphabets. But you can write numbers after the alphabet. It cannot be started with a number, but later it can be able to start. Like let's take n1. It doesn't started with the number, right? It started with n. So followed by you can have a number. Sorry. I'm gonna try this. Let's run it again. See, the output is returned. So that's how the variables will be declared. And let's check for these data types. So we have int, and let's take the input output statements. Just we declare the variable n. If you want to take the input from the user, what we use, say int n. What it basically does is it will take the value what we entered in the screen, and it will allocate the space in the compiler. Let's run the program. So it is prompting the value. So we are entering 2. So the value of n will be stored in the 2. So to be more clear, I'll write a statement. It will just print out the statement. Enter the value of right. So it will take the enter value and get it. Sorry, forgot to include the semicolon. So just enter the value 2. So that 2 is stored in the variable name n, and it is allocated in the memory. So why it is not printing anything? Because we haven't give a command to print the value. We haven't used any cout statement. We just use for the enter the value. So if you want to print the value of the n, so you can use cout statements. So you can even use internal statements, like you can even segregate this. the value of, you gotta use double quotes if you are printing any if you are printing any string value, you have to use double quotes, otherwise it will give you a error. If you are using just if you are like referencing the variable names, you don't have to use double quotes. See, right now I'm just writing the value of n. It is a string because it doesn't makes any sense. It is not a variable. The value of n. So for that we need double quotes equal to, and I'm ending it. And right now I need to print the value of n, right? So just include n. You don't need to use double quotes because it's not a string. It's not a string. It's a variable. END means n line. Means basically the output cursor will go to the next line. See, I'm writing 50. The value of n is 50. That's how it's printed. These are the basic input output statements. We know variables, we get know data types. Oh no, I forgot to teach you the data types. So as we know, integer can only store integer values. See, I'll give you an example. Run the program. Let's give the value as 50.0. It is a no 50.36. As it is a floating point, even you run and get the value, it still gives you 50 because it only stores the value of the integer part, not the floating parts. That's why you use float, double. So based on the value that you want to store. Let's take an example. Like if you want to store the value of salary will be credited in points only, like 50,000 rupees 60 cents something. So that will be stored as a floating values. Like if you are taking number of if you are buying 3 items, buying number of items, like if you go for a mall, you are buying 10 items, you don't buy 10.6 item, right? You will buy as a integral number, like 10 items, 20 items. So there we will be using integer. So for that you just need to use a separate data type float, n1 is equal to 50 point. See how n1 is equal to 20.1. So definitely it will print here this here. See, basically, let's comment this out, clear this out. See, floating points. It does print the floating points. Let's check another. See, size of int. So what is this size of? So size of is a function where it basically returns the size of that particular data type. As I told you earlier, I told that size of integer is 4 bytes. So this size of function will return the size of the particular data type. Let's take size of int. It will give you 4. Which means 4 bytes of memory. So as you can check for all the data types. Size, float, double, char. See, size of integer is 4 byte, float is 4 byte, double is 8 byte, and character is 1 byte. And right now I'll give you a simple exercise, to put your hands on this programming. So do comment what is the size of the long, or you can say what the size of long, and also comment what is the size of string. I don't think so you'll get a size of a string because size of the string is based on the length of the string, so that you don't get a size of string. Just do comment that what is the size of a long, And also I will give you a program. Just take um, two values, two input values, and try to print the two input values as the output. So try these programs and comment the size of it long in the comment section. If you do like the video, share, subscribe, because if you like the video, it will reach to more number of people there, so that many number of people can help from this video. So if you find interesting, do subscribe to my channel. A lot more DSA videos will circulate, or is will come as soon as possible. I'll try to upload a daily one video for sure. And if you find it is helpful, share it with your friends who are beginner at a DSA. So for them, it will be started from the scratch, and you will be in a certain level where you can able to crack your interviews with a high package for the product based companies, or you can say. So yeah, that's all for this today. Thank you, bye bye, see you tomorrow.